It's hard enough to keep up on water in your garden, but it gets even harder when you don't have running water because maybe you're trying to live off grid, or maybe your garden is just farther away from your water source. Well, we have the situation where we don't have running water. So today we're going to show you how we can water our garden like this with no running water. Welcome back to Tina's Hideaway. So today we are going to show you how we take the water from our private pond on our property in the middle of our woods, and we're going to take that, we're going to put it into this barrel that's on our side-by-side, and then we're going to put it into a tote so that it's handy and room temperature and ready to use for watering our garden. So this barrel is kind of built onto a pallet, so it sits real still. We do ratchet strap it in here, otherwise it would fly out when we're driving around. This top thing here, we unscrew that. This is where we're going to fill the water from the pond with a hose. It has a valve on here, so when we're going to take it out later, we'll show you how that works, where we can hook the hose up to here. So what we're going to start with here is a 12-volt portable transfer pump. This one I believe we got at Fleet Farm for about $35. They're now $70. We got this one about 4 or 5 years ago. It has a filter attached to it, which will help prevent some of the solids that are in the pond from going into our water. The water that we're going to use out of here, as you can see, there's a lot of algae there, but it's like our secret miracle grow. It makes all our plants grow really, really well. So now we're going to show you how we get this set up. Using flip-flops on a hill, probably not the best bet, but you know, don't always think these things through ahead of time. So first I'm going to get this filter in here and I'm going to put it in the water face up so it doesn't suck up all the muck and stuff at the bottom. All right, so we got that in there. And then we just use a 12-volt battery. And with that battery, we're just going to hook the positive, the red, to the positive, and the negative, the black, to the negative. Once that is done, there's this little on-off switch here, so that when we're ready, all we have to do is go like that, turn it on. Then we go back up here, and as you can see, we have water coming out. I'm going to go like that, and we're going to let this fill. It usually takes about the time it's going to take me to drink this one cold beverage for this to fill. So we'll be back after that. All right, it's been a little over 15 minutes. As you can see, it's almost full. And this water in here is crystal clear. So even though that pond looks really gross, it has really clean water. And this pond is spring fed. So this water is ice cold. So if I feel on here, it is really, really cold. So now you can see it's running over a little bit. So now it's time for me to go shut it off. And now that we have it shut off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the battery. We're going to have to pack everything up because we're going to need the battery and everything back at our place so that we can fill that tote. So we'll see you once we get over there. Now we're back up by our gardens. So the tote is full. Now what our goal is to get this water into that tote. So I just want to explain a little bit more about this barrel that we have here. A very good friend of ours gave it to us. His grandpa made it and used it for watering his trees up at their cabin, where also there was no running water. So it was a great way to haul water, but yet, you know, when you don't have that running water source where you need it, it's an easy way to transfer the water. Now, what we do sometimes also in the summer is we have a food plot that we plant sweet corn in, and then we have to hand water that. So we don't have totes by that area. So we'll take the UTV with this barrel, and then instead of having this hook up, we'll hook up this spout. So then it's a spout going down, and then we can fill our watering cans as needed by turning the valve on and off. So what we had to do for this setup now is the end that had this filter on was this end. So we took the filter off, and then we connected it to this spout here. Then we took the transfer pump, which this green hose leads to the transfer pump, and we hooked it onto the tote. Then we got our collapsible hose here, and that goes all the way up. There's a hole on the top of this tote, and that's how we're gonna fill that. I really didn't need you to see me climbing up and down because I probably would have fell, so that we did off camera. Now we have to do the same as before. We have to hook up our plugs here to the battery. So this battery is just our boat battery. So you can use any 12-volt battery. So we keep this on a trickle charge when we're not using it. And we've already done where we have transferred 5 of these barrels where we're pulling the water out of the pond to the barrel, then from the barrel to the tote. So it's a transfer of almost 500 gallons. Because this doesn't get quite full, even though this is a 55-gallon, it's between 50 and 55 gallons by the time we have it full. So that battery has more than enough power to do that. So the next step, let's hook up our battery. Then we have our on-off switch. And before I turn that on, I want to open this valve. So now the valve is open. So when I turn this on, it'll start pumping and it'll go into there. And you can see it going up through the hose. And now it's a matter of waiting for that to fill. The one thing, this tote here, you have to make sure you have food safe totes. So these are both food safe totes. Because obviously if you're using that water to put on your food and your plants that you're going to eat, you want it to be food safe. So now the last time it took about 15 minutes to fill this, it'll take about 15 minutes to empty this one. So we'll be back after this one is emptied out. When you're emptying this barrel into here, and when it's empty, where the point where it's not sucking any more water out, it's a definite sound you can hear. So as soon as you hear that, the easiest way to stop that water from going is just pull that negative off the battery. And that's typically what we do so that we don't burn that pump out. This pump, now if you feel, I'm feeling it, and it is quite hot to the touch. So we've used it over and over, and we've gone and refilled this tote a number of times, and it does get hot, and it hasn't burnt it out yet. So we've been pretty lucky. My husband likes to test those things out to the fullest. But if you don't feel comfortable going to go do this whole process again, then let it cool off in between uses. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to shut this valve off. So this was the hose that was up on top of the tote. We're going to shut this valve, and we're going to get this set up now again for watering the garden. So it's going to show you kind of the last step of, now typically we'd let this water sit so that it gets to be room temperature. It's not ice cold anymore. But for the purposes of showing you this, we're going to go ahead and do it. So this is the same hose that we used, that we had the filter on to get the water out of the pond. And I'm just going to remove that from here. And if I wouldn't have turned that off, water might have run out of there. So now here's our setup for this tote. So this particular tote started with a 2-inch thread. So we took the 2-inch and we reduced it down to a 1-inch. And then the 1-inch we reduced down to the 3/4 inch, which is what your standard garden hose is. Now, in order to make this work with this pump, we needed something, a hose with 2 female ends. The only thing we could find was a wash line hose, or a wash machine hose, sorry. Um, if you can think of anything else, that any kind of short hose like this that has 2 female ends on it, let us know, because eventually we might have to replace this, but for now this is what works. So I'm going to take that, which is already, we keep that hooked onto there. I'm going to hook this onto here. And I did want to mention, one of the other things that we use this tote for, or we've used this pump for too, is we have a pontoon, and it with no running water here, it was really hard for us to winterize that pontoon on site without the running water. So the first year we did it, we used this transfer pump with our rain barrel, but the trick is you got to have a hard hose like this, not the collapsible hose, because these black ones here are the collapsible hoses, and it just wasn't enough water going through. But if you use the standard hose that's hard like this, it worked a lot better. The next year what we did is we had the tote full, so we backed the pontoon up as close as we could to it, and then we used this pump with this, and then we put the earmuffs onto the motor in order to winterize the boat. So it just worked really good. It's just another way of multi-use for something like this. So now what we're going to do is, this was the hose that filled. Now we're going to hook up our sprayer. So now when we're going to do this process, we're going to have to turn this valve on, because that opens it up so it can flow out, and then it can go through this pump here. And now we can rehook this up, and since the switch is on, as soon as I do this, it's going to start pumping water. And what we're going to water is my herb garden, which is what you see me watering at the beginning of the video. And these are a lot of the herbs that I use in all my salves, and some of them are just for saving for cooking. But so now as soon as I hook this up, maybe it won't start. I must have turned the switch off. So now it's filling this hose, this collapsible hose, and I can go back to watering. Now, one of the things we did, this is a 25-foot hose on here right now. We have put up to 100-foot of hose on here at one time, so we could water our trees and our flowers, and it just works really well. So this is the setup we use. I'm just going to quick turn this off. This is a setup we use so we can have running water without having to go back and forth with watering cans, because that did get to be quite time consuming when it came to watering. So we wanted to find a better way, and this turned out to be our better way. If you have any questions about any part of this process and how to do it, just comment below, and we'll try to do our best to fill you in, maybe do another video with more details on a particular part of it. Just let us know what you need to hear. All right. Well, I want to say thank you for watching. We really do appreciate it. And don't forget to press that notification button and subscribe.